barring a surprise, because Taylor Jenkins is in charge of the starting lineup.
Yes.
I believe. He hasn't announced it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But barring a surprise, Jaylen Wells should be in the starting lineup tonight.
Yep.
At which point, he'll be starting for the 21st time already after being the 39th pick in the 2024 NBA draft. Fun Q&A with him at Hoops Hype yesterday. Did you happen to see this?
I did, yeah.
I thought it was great.
I did too.
He sounds really impressive.
Yep.
So it was a fun Q&A with Jaylen Wells yesterday, published at hoopshype.com, and he's talking about any number of things because the story really is a remarkable story. Like, this is going to be a real, like, if the Grizzlies, this is the type of thing that if the Grizzlies continue to play well, get into the playoffs, and he's a meaningful part of it, you're going to hear what I'm about to say 50,000 times, which is, you know, he didn't have Division I offers coming out of high school? You know, he went Division II out of high school? Do you know, even after 2 years, 2 really promising years at the Division II level, the only Power 5 offer he got came from Washington State? And the only reason he got that one is because Washington State had an assistant who was from Sacramento, and Jaylen was from Sacramento, so there was a connection there, and that's how he ended up in Pullman. And then he's the 39th pick in the draft, and even then you don't expect much because, like, you never expect much from 39 picks in anything, or at least in the NBA draft. And then he shows himself to be a legitimate rotation option, and now he's starting for a team that's got one of the best 5 records in the NBA. Most people around the league don't know that story, what I just told you, the very surface level version of Jaylen Wells went from point A to point B, right? But if the Grizzlies continue to play well and end up in the playoffs, that'll be one of those stories that you'll go, oh my God, are they doing it again? We know Jaylen Wells didn't have Division I offers coming out of high school. We know Washington State was the only Power 5 school that wanted him after 2 years at the D2 level. It'll be one of those great stories that is so great that you can't even watch a Grizzlies game without him telling it. And by the time you've heard it 11 times, you know it better than Jaylen Wells even knows it. That's where we're headed with this thing.
Yep.
But it is a remarkable story. Just because we've all heard it now 50 times doesn't mean it's any less remarkable. So he talks about that in the Q&A, and then talks about just his welcome to the NBA moment. I thought this story was funny. It's a thing you often hear people ask other basketball players. Basketball players ask each other. People like me ask basketball players, hey, what's the moment where you looked up and you were like, wow, I'm here. I'm here. And typically it's going to be
guarding LeBron.
I looked up and I'm on a court with LeBron James.
Yeah.
I looked up and, man, there's Kevin Durant. Or I looked up and I'm guarding Steph Curry. And you know what Jaylen Wells said? He said, he acknowledged up front, this is random, but I looked up and I went, I'm guarding Taj Gibson.
In a preseason game.
Why am I guarding? First, like, why am I guarding? But, like, Taj Gibson's 39 years old.
Right.
So think of the age difference here. Like, Jaylen Wells was like 6 when Taj Gibson entered the NBA.
Yeah.
But he was like, it was just this moment of like, how am I even in a basketball game with Taj Gibson? And I guess the California stuff maybe makes some sense because Taj Gibson played at USC.
Yeah.
That was actually my welcome to college basketball moment.
What?
I looked
Covering
up,
Taj Gibson?
I looked up. I was at the Galen Center on USC's campus, and I went, I cannot believe I'm covering Taj Gibson. I've really made it. It's not exactly right, but I did cover Taj Gibson at the Galen Center. I remember that. But he was like, yeah, I saw Taj Gibson, and I was like, I can't believe I'm guarding Taj Gibson, which is just a funny thing to say. And then he went to, and Luka Doncic. That was a moment. Like, I look up, and it's my job. So one of the questions is, when did you realize you were going to be a starter? And not just a starter, but somebody who starts even when Marcus Smart is healthy and available to start. When did you realize that you're going to start in front of Marcus Smart, which is what's happening right now?
Yes.
What was that conversation like? And Jaylen said that it really wasn't a conversation. Like, we really didn't talk about it. I just sort of walked in, and on the board, there's the starting lineup, and I realized I'm in it, and I'm guarding Damian Lillard, and let's go. And that was the gist of it. And so I think from a distance, those of us who aren't in that locker room every day, you wonder, like, how is that going to work? Because if you go back to the preseason, when we assumed everybody would be healthy, when we were having those conversations, like, if everybody's healthy, what does that look like? And what you come to find out is, like, you should never really have conversations about if everybody's healthy, because that's never a real thing. Everybody's never healthy. But when you had those conversations, it'd be like, all right, Ja, Dez, Jaren, Zach, on the wing, what do you do? And I think a pretty common opinion among Grizzlies fans was the best basketball option, if you're just strictly talking basketball, is probably Vince Williams. But Marcus Smart is a veteran. He's been a starter the majority over almost his entire career. You brought him here to serve a purpose. Can he serve that purpose off the bench? Is he comfortable off the bench? From an ego perspective, is he comfortable off the bench? Like, this is a guy who already got moved out of a place he didn't want to get moved out of, and now we're going to put him on the bench in Memphis. How's that going to play with Mark? Is Marcus Smart somebody we can do that to? Is this so? Like, this was a real thing. Like, and I think where most people settled was Vince might be the best basketball option, but you probably got to start Marcus Smart just because you probably got to start Marcus Smart.
Yep.
Right? So think about where we're at now. That's not even the debate. Marcus Smart is now playing behind, and you know what I mean, but playing behind a rookie, a second-round pick. I think it's totally reasonable to wonder, what are the dynamics of that? How is that going? It's one thing to, put on a smile and say the right things when a camera's in front of you, but when it's not, how is that going? Is that cool? Is everybody cool? So in this Q&A, Hoop Side, Jaylen Wells has asked, so who's like sort of taken you under their wing? Like really been a mentor and really tried to help you become what it is you become? First name out of his mouth, you know who it was? Marcus Smart.
That's awesome.
That's great to hear.
It's awesome. Yeah.
It's great to hear because I don't know that everybody would be like that. In fact, I'm certain not everybody would be like that.
Right.
That's a hard thing. Hey, can you mentor, teach, guide this 21-year-old who we might put in the starting lineup ahead of you? That's not easy. Or at least I can understand why it might not be. But it seems to be going fine.
Yeah.
That, to me, was the most important thing that was in that Q&A. The whole thing's good and interesting, and Jaylen Wells comes across like a really thoughtful, mature, sharp, impressive young man. But the most interesting thing in the whole thing was, who is it that is really, from a veteran perspective, been great with you? He mentions Ja as well and says Ja brings energy every day. He holds this thing together. It's easy to work when you watch that guy show up and work every day. He had really good stuff to say about Ja too. But the first name out of his mouth was Marcus Smart. And given the dynamics of how everything has played out so far this season, that's good to hear. It at least suggests, because any coach or front office member will tell you things like this. You have to make hard decisions. Not everybody in your locker room is always going to love them. And then there are times where you're going to have to smooth them things over. And you're going to have to encounter some stuff that you'd rather not encounter, but like this is part of the job. You're not just coaching basketball, you're managing basketball players. By extension, multimillionaires. By extension, men with a lot of pride, men with egos. It's not the easiest thing. We can all sit around and draw up plays on a board, but a lot of this job is managing that stuff. And so it's easy to assume that might be a type of thing you've got to manage. It might be the type of thing you've really got to figure out. And it could be the type of thing that causes an issue. And yet it doesn't appear that it is.
No.
And hear Jaylen Wells say, who's the guy who's been helping me? It's the guy who thought he was going to be starting next to John Dess, but isn't now because of me. That's the guy who's been helping me. That's encouraging.
I think so too.
That's precisely why when you bring a Marcus Smart into your franchise, this is maybe at the top of the list. Sure, on-ball defense, winning DNA, all that stuff. But, like, can you actually be a positive presence for the people in this locker room we need you to be a positive presence for, regardless of whether you're in the role you thought you were going to be in or not? Can you be a real professional every day and bring those things to the table that we in part brought you here because of? And so far, it sounds like he is. I'll take Jaylen Wells at his word. He was asked, who's helping you? Who's helping you be, honestly, the biggest surprise of the entire rookie class? Who's helping you be that? His answer, Marcus Smart. If you haven't read the Q&A yet, check it out. It's really good.
The Gary Parrish Show, live weekdays at 10 a.m.